I'm Dave O'Hara, broker of About Redlands Realty and Loan. I've been in the business for 22 years. I've actually been a broker for 20 years. I've seen a lot. I've lived in Redlands pretty much my whole life, a couple of vacations out. But I know Redlands intimately. I know the streets, I know the locations. Where you live is probably just as intimate to you, depending on how long you've lived there. But that's an important aspect of buying real estate, knowing the area. We're going to go through a lot of different aspects, but this segment is on where. So we want to know the area that we're going to invest in, definitely. But not just helping Redlands. I want to help each and every person I know to be financially free through real estate. Now, of course, this 5-segment series, this is the third one. The other 2 were recorded. You can go to our YouTube page, About Redlands Realty. All of our social media is About Redlands Realty. You can check them out, send them to friends, maybe revisit this one, send it to other people. But the whole idea is to help as many people as possible to be financially free through real estate. And this series is Real Estate for Retirement, Generational Wealth. Such a fantastic mechanism. In my opinion, the best available. So I spoke a little bit about how you need to be familiar with the area. Redlands, used to be in the day, Redlands had more churches and banks than any city per capita in California. That's not the case anymore. Actually, Lancaster has the most churches, but I don't think they have a huge population. We're 75,000 here, but just a little interesting point there. Okay, so our office is on the 2nd floor of the Redlands Visitor Center. Redlands Visitor Center is the very first and only that we're aware of privately funded 501c3 nonprofit visitor center in the world. And we're upstairs. So as you come through the visitor center and you come upstairs, we're going to talk about your needs and wants, but we're also going to talk about the 4 pillars, the Parthenon, right? And what is that? Income, assets, credit, and the property. So, of course, there's a few things in reference to that we went into a lot in the 2nd segment that talk about, so if you have a fat enough checking account, then yeah, maybe you don't need income because your assets overwhelm it because you're just going to write a check, in which case you don't need credit either. But that segment talked a lot about that aspect, that if you're going to get financing for this property, whether it's your first and primary residence or it's your 20th property, then those are aspects that we would want to talk about. We'll also talk about what your needs and wants are for that property. But this segment is really focusing more on investing, right? The whole series is investing, but a lot of people need to buy a primary residence prior to actually investing, calling it an investment property. So, yeah, we talked about who, we talked about how, this is where. So where do you buy the property? Is it in Redlands? Well, firstly, you got to look at the macro version. And so in reference to a macro version, you would look at, personally, I'm looking at the United States. I did have a client call and say, I'm looking at Costa Rica. I said, I don't know the real estate laws there. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm going with America. So if we just boil it down to that specific area, then there are certain stages or areas that you want to look into. So don't be confused when I say specifics. So I did have a client come and say, I really like Buena Vista. And I said, well, Alvarado is a lot like Buena Vista. And he said, well, what's the difference? I said, well, if Alvarado was 3% cheaper than Buena Vista, would you buy on Alvarado? And he said, well, probably, because they're pretty similar. But it's not specifically the street. Alvarado and Buena Vista are definitely sought after streets in Redlands, but it's not particularly a street that we're looking for, but it's from the macro down to the micro. So we're looking at the little stuff. There's a whole series of things we want to look at. One is the geographic area of population and the neighborhood. So is the population really going to facilitate renting? And then the neighborhood. is the neighborhood, is it a new neighborhood, new construction? You know, that has a certain demographic or socioeconomic clientele that are in a new neighborhood. Is it a transitioning neighborhood? Transitioning generally is an older neighborhood, 40 to 50 years old, and the original residents are transitioning out of it, and younger resident families are moving in, or possibly declining. Yeah, so I try to forget those because it doesn't happen very often. But what I mean by it doesn't happen very often is generally, even when there's deferred maintenance, a person's going to buy it at a discounted price and they're going to go ahead and fix it up. So an area could certainly be declining, but it doesn't have to be a bad place to buy. So I think my point there, though, is that know the neighborhood. You're looking big, narrowing it down, narrowing it down. Once you do narrow it down and you are figuring out that neighborhood, then of course we want to look at jobs. Now, a person that's buying, and this may be your case, when you buy as a primary residence, you're willing to commute further because you're gaining equity. You're willing to suffer a little bit in order to gain the equity. But if you're renting, you want to be near your workplace. You're not willing to suffer much if you're going to rent because you're not gaining anything but 30 days for your check. So where are you looking in that neighborhood? Is that a neighborhood of commuters, or is there an industry around there that would allow for it to be paid for locally? So for instance, Redlands has ESRI. They have a lot of employees. The second largest employer in Redlands is the school district. But I had a customer that called up a couple years ago. Fantastic guy, Michael. He just gotten out of the military, had a full-time job. He wanted to buy 29 Palms. I said, Michael, you're 30 years old. You like surfing. You're playing the guitar. You're going to college. What are you moving to 29 Palms for? Because there's a military base there. So what? He says, your commanding officer would never let you not pay rent. I want units in 29 Palms. So being a veteran, he was able to buy a 3-unit property, 0 down. He had a couple of grand for closing costs. He bought it. A year later, he sold it, made 100 grand, moved to San Diego. Fantastic. So he bought that as a primary residence. The rents helped him qualify for it because it was 3-unit. The 2 units that he rented out, because he lived in one, made his whole payment. And in 1 year, it had appreciated by 100 grand. Fantastic start to real estate investing and generational wealth. So is there enough jobs around there for people to make the payment? So services. So we'll just go back to 29 Palms real quick. You know, the renters that he actually had were in the service industry. They were servicing the people that were having to be there. So they were Starbucks workers or Stater Brothers or whatever. So the service industry is what was paying his rents. But a couple of ways to look at the service and amenities areas of that is that, is it a place that you would want to live, or is it a place that you have to live? You know, the commuting thing was one aspect that we talked about. The other aspect in reference to wanting to live there is it long-term or short-term? Is it an Airbnb? Is it permanent? Is it snowbirds? We all have friends that have places at the river. They spend the time there in the summer, but the snowbirds rent from them in the winter. So these are the aspects we want to make sure and cover, look at, consider. But have you ever considered that the majority of single-family residences that are actually investment properties that are rented are by individuals or married couples? As a matter of fact, of those single-family residences, there's a small percentage then of those individuals that own investment properties that have 2 to 4 unit. Now, 1 to 4 unit residential properties are the most common finance properties. They pretty much every bank in America has a loan program for 1 to 4 residential properties. And the 5 to 8 doesn't get touched. As a matter of fact, the REITs, real estate investment trusts, or the commercial investors, people that gang their money together, or the Black Rocks and these kinds of mega investors, they don't touch the 5 to 8 unit properties. So when you figure out the macro and you reduce it down to the micro of what area, let's say you've decided in this neighborhood and you like the services and you like the jobs, you're thinking this is it. Expand that bubble just a little bit and also search for 5 to 8 unit properties, because that's the sweet spot. Most people get 1 to 4. The big investors get 10 and up, right? They want apartment buildings. We only care about cost per door. What are we making on each door as opposed to what it costs us? So 5 to 8 unit properties are considered commercial property. They qualify on gross rents. You're going to have a larger down payment, and you would, in most cases, need reserves, which is the amount of money that you have after close of escrow in assets in order to pay the mortgage payment if you have too many. But that gives them a little solid position, the investor, that is. But one thing that would help you a lot is having a calculator. So each and every attendee today that has come to hang out with me is going to get a nice Excel spreadsheet that has all these calculations on it. The calculations help you to go through a vast amount of calculations of, cash on cash value, sale and rent returns, amortization schedules, these kinds of, it's a one-sheet spreadsheet that each of you will receive. It'll be emailed out to you. We have a little look at that.
Sure do.
Yeah, it's a fantastic little spreadsheet. And here it is, just for knowing the numbers. Because remember, we're talking about investing, and whether you're buying your first house as a primary residence, that's still an investment. So know the numbers. This isn't an emotional game. If it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. So we have to make sure that we're knowing the numbers as we're going through. And it's tough. It's tough to know the numbers, but this spreadsheet will help you a lot. And you can always call and ask me, and I can crunch some numbers for you as well. But, talk to your mortgage and real estate professional that you trust in order to get the numbers right. Now, I've given this to real estate professionals and individuals, and everybody has appreciated it. So it might be a little advanced at first, but as you play with it, you'll see it's very helpful. All right. So moving along, if you're not into having a 5 to 8 unit and really you don't have any cash for a 1 to 4 additionally, you can always get a home equity line of credit if you have equity. Most people do. Matter of fact, nearly 60% of primary residences in America are owned free and clear. Surprising number. But you can always get a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, in order to go ahead and use that as a down payment for your next property. Have you ever thought of looking in your own backyard? An ADU, accessory development unit. Here's another fantastic idea. So an ADU has had multiple changes in legislation. There's been a Senate bill, and there's been many assembly bills that have come out that change so much in reference to ADUs. So this next slide shows just a few of them, but there's also, that's not listed on that slide, and I can give you a whole list and you can Google it as well, but you can put an accessory unit pretty much beside or behind anything, not just put that unit in there, because an accessory unit, just to clarify that a little bit, is a granny pad. It's an in-law quarters. It's it's a casita. But these are just a handful of the regulatory changes. For the most part, it boils down to, it doesn't matter how large your lot size is. You can build up to 1,200 square foot or half the size of the original structure. It used to be that you had to be owner occupied in the main structure in order to build an ADU. no longer. So you can have an investment property and build an ADU. You can have units and build multiple ADUs. You can have a single family and build an ADU and a JADU. So an ADU, accessory development unit, JADU, junior accessory development unit. This is one that I built 3 years ago. And here's a little bit of a stretch on it, a little bit of a change, but I built this for Deborah and myself. So we live in the backyard in the ADU, and our daughter with her expanding family, awesome big little babies, right? They took over the family house. So now we all live on the same property. We share the expenses and we get to see the grandbabies every single day. We see them every day. We have fun with them. We watch them grow. We listen to them laugh. How could it get better than that? So I really do try and keep these pretty close. Try and keep these under 30 minutes. I hope you got a little something out of it. If you have any questions, always feel free to call, text, email me. But let me leave you with a thought. And that is that, okay, Dave, yeah. We could buy a house, we could do it. It's not the right time. Let's look at a little bit of inventory issue. So this is a segment that I will do over and above and off branch of this series, but inventory. This, as you see the troughs, the lulls, those are right at the year mark, which is the winter. There's always a lull in the winter, but look at the crests or the tops, right? There was so many more houses, 18, 19, 20. Look at the drop in inventory. We don't have enough inventory for the amount of people that want to buy houses. The millennial generation is the largest segment of the population. They're the biggest. They're the ones that are now starting to form new households, get out of their parents' house, get out of an apartment. They want a roof of their own. There isn't enough property, enough homes being built. That lends to supply shortage, right? Demand increases, supply is short, supply and demand keeps values up. So, Jeff and I have had a lot of conversations on whether or not there's going to be a bubble burst. Well, it just can't. It can't. Yeah, inventory is low. Interest rates have gone up, stagnated even more purchases. Right. Yeah, all the buyers are sitting on the fence. But I argue now is the time to buy because it's always low in the winter. Interest rates are up. Everybody is sitting on the fence. So to me, it's act now. And consider, if you didn't act now, in 5 years, you know how fast time flies by. Man, I was 20 years old just a couple months ago, I swear. But time flies. In 5 years, if you don't buy, would you look back at, I was thinking about buying that neighbor's house. It needed a little bit of work. It's going to be worth 100,000, 200,000. I don't know, however much more. Appreciation in California averaged 20% in the last couple of years. It certainly has gone down now. But for the last 40 years, prior to COVID, it averaged a little over 4%. And that's an appreciation on the total value of the property, not what you invest. So talk about appreciation on what you invested is enormous, hundreds, even thousands of percent. So this needing to be shut down. There it is. Anyway, technology. So I encourage you to not let an opportunity pass you by. This is definitely not a sales pitch. This is a pitch to my friends, family, and everybody in the world that these are the facts that I come across, and I try my best to relay them in a good manner. But talk to your professional, talk to your mortgage real estate professional, your trusted advisor. Just have the conversation, because if 5, 10 years from now passes by and you've missed an opportunity to buy 1, 2, 5, 10 houses that could have literally created generational wealth, I don't know, that'd be a bummer. Just saying. So anyway, thanks for attending. Our next workshop is in 3 weeks. This is a 5-segment series, Real Estate for Retirement. Remember, first segment, I talked about Steve. Guy's got over 20 properties. He's been a firefighter his whole life. He bought one house for every year. He worked for a fire department. He never made more than $60,000. He owns over 20 houses. The city just bought 4 of them from him for $1.4 million. This guy, he's set. He's done. He doesn't even own a computer. He's got a garage full of paint because he paints them all the same color. It's fantastic. Never owned more than $60,000 a year. I know I could go on, but hey, call, text, or email if I can answer any questions, help you in any way. The calculator will be coming to you. It's on auto send. Bam, you're gonna get it. But I'm right here. Dave O'Hara, broker with About Redlands Realty and Loan. Thanks.